Welcome back into our program. Whether you are looking for your own mountain cabin or an upscale suite in a historic lodge, the Topoco Lodge provides a true resort experience on both hands. You can get the cabin, you can get a suite, you get the regular rooms there at the lodge. Great food right there on site at the Topoco Tavern. Kayaking, hiking, all kinds of outdoor activities right beside a rushing river. Topoco.com is where you can learn more, or visit their Facebook page, the Topoco Lodge. Okay, quarterback guru Jordan Palmer, Vanderbilt kid, you know his brother Carson Palmer. Jordan Palmer is one of these guys that works with quarterbacks in the off season, prepares them for the draft, gets their mechanics ready in between seasons, etc. He worked with Jarrett Stidham. Stick with me, this has a Tennessee tie. Patriots quarterback who didn't live up to expectations this year, and somebody asked him, why didn't he live up to expectations? His answer, I thought, was interesting from a Tennessee perspective. Let's take a look at it. He said, what people don't realize is Jarrett had as far to go mentally in terms of what he knew about football between college and pro as anybody I ever worked with. People don't know this, but Art Briles' offense, basically nothing in it would help you play in the NFL. The way you read defenses, I'm not saying it's not prolific, but none of it translates. Now, he went on to say that, of course, Stidham started at Baylor, then he wound up at Auburn, and he went on to say that the only system worse for NFL prep than Baylor is Gus Malzahn's when he was at Auburn, and Stidham went through both. What's that have to do with Tennessee? Josh Heupel runs the Art Briles system, or at least a good chunk of it. That's the closest tie you're going to find. So my question is, that, so many of us think, well, he's going to recruit quarterbacks because look at the numbers. If he's going after the top NFL prospect type quarterbacks, that Alabama and Georgia and Texas A&M are going to say, hey, we'll get you ready for the NFL. That system won't. So my question is, do the numbers make up for that and kids are just going to say, I'm going to Tennessee because I'm going to throw for 5,000 yards? Or will that hurt him that it's not really good for draft prep? What are your thoughts on whether or not the Heupel system could backfire in recruiting?
It's going to depend on the guy. I think one thing that people should understand is that the air raid and what Tennessee is going to be running are two different systems. Our Briles would call it the power spread. Essentially, it doesn't really have a name.
It's got veer concepts.
Yeah, it's all kinds of stuff. And so it's going to depend on the guy. This offense has not needed that elite quarterback to be like so prolific and put up numbers. It does need athletes on the outside. It's been able to succeed with low-level quarterbacks, so it may hurt him. I mean, Stidham, that was a huge coup for Baylor when they got him, and he was not fantastic at Baylor when he got there either, and obviously ended up leaving, and all that stuff went down with Baylor. So I could see it. I think it's going to depend on the guy. How important is putting up numbers? How important is, do you believe that your skills supersede that you can say, well, maybe those things don't translate, but I can learn that at the NFL. I want to go throw for 4,000 yards and win a bunch of games and do all these things. It's going to depend on the guy, I think.
Vince, will it hurt him in terms of recruiting the top pro-style quarterbacks?
Well, it's interesting, but I think Tennessee will have an answer to that. So I'm going to say perhaps, to David's point, for some guys, because they will have an adjustment and say, look, what we're going to do, we're going to be slightly different here at Tennessee, and then with our resources, with this school, you're going to be able to get the attention of NFL prospects. It's not going to be exactly the same. So, obviously they can adjust it. They may not run the exact same plays. They have concepts. The tempo isn't flexible. Their beliefs aren't, but they're going to have to adjust to their personnel. And then also, they're not going to be able to really see what this offense can truly be capable of a couple of years down the road. So I think they'll have answers for it in recruiting.
He does at least have the luxury of being able to point to Drew Lock, who's had some success in the NFL and making some money.
That's true. On the other side, though, Drew Lock came out and credited Derek Dooley for giving him more of a pro crash course in what's going to be needed in the NFL. But I would argue Bryce Petty got drafted, RG3 got drafted, both of those high. So if you put up the numbers, I think you're going to have some team that's willing to draft you. But Will, your thoughts on
Steve Spurrier's quarterback's always got the same, but Rex Grossman went in the first round. I mean, they're guys that do it. And for me, if I'm the fan sitting on the other side, I'd rather have a system that I can say, I don't have to have the first round quarterback to get production out of him, because I'm going to miss on who I think is the greatest quarterback in the world. And I'm going to not always get that guy, so I've got to find somebody in a system that I can take that mid-level quarterback and make him look better. So for me, I like that better. Having to depend on getting a Peyton Manning and the once-in-a-lifetime
Bingo.
guy to come in is not where I want to be sitting, because that doesn't happen often.
A lot of quarterbacks have had success in this offense. I think it'll be interesting to see receivers too, because when a lot of the Baylor receivers ended up at the next level, one of the main critiques is these guys don't know how to run routes. They're just fast and physical specimens. Like you hear that with Kendall Wright, you hear that with I guess Josh Gordon, sort of. But a lot of the Baylor receivers that went there, it's really a fascinating, because it's sort of an existential question of what's the point. You want to put guys in the league, sure. But guess what? If Jeremy Pruitt had 6 guys drafted and he went 3-7, he's still getting fired.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's like, what's the point? What do you want to do? You want to have both, but if you have to pick one, I'm with Will, I think.
When they got rid of Pruitt, and we did a little thing here on what I would look for in a head coach if I were Danny White out doing the search, I said I'd play Moneyball, because nobody's going to out-recruit Alabama. And Tennessee certainly isn't right now.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to out-recruit Georgia or Alabama. You may want to. It's not going to happen. Not now anyway, especially not with the NCAA looming overhead. So go find somebody that has a system that doesn't need to out-recruit Alabama and Georgia to put points on the board and win some games. Get back to respectability. Then maybe go worry about hiring another guy to come in and try and battle with Alabama to be the most recruit-heavy program in the country. I'm with Will. I like the idea that, okay, you didn't get the Simpson kid who went to Alabama. Well, if Brian Maurer turns out to throw for 2,500 yards this year and 30 touchdowns, who cares?
Yeah.
You're getting the production you need to win games. So anyway, I just thought that was interesting, though, that that opposing coaches will, they look for any negative they can find, and that will be the one that system won't prep you for the pros like we will. Be interesting to see how it's handled. When we come back, let's handicap the race for the quarterback position, including Brian Maurer. Who's going to win this thing, and who's going to be your starter in the fall? Come on back on the Sports Oil.